We have to turn out. Thank you, Hammer.
Got 1 minute, according to clock on the wall. My watch says we already passed.
So we have members of the county commission here, Mr. Mayor, and we also have members of our planning and zoning board. Or planning, I mean, it's economic development. So you may want to ask them to stand and introduce themselves.
Tim Fraser, he's in the county commissioners. That one, he's the chairman for the county. Yeah.
I'll call to order a regular council meeting on this Monday, January 27th, 2025 at 5:30 PM. Could we stand for the pledge of allegiance to our flag? And Dr. Faber, would you lead it, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Counselor Miller? Here, present. Counselor Foster?
Present.
Counselor Laidlaw? Present. Counselor Baber?
Yes, ma'am.
Mayor, you have a quorum.
There'll be no laughing about my glasses.
Those are sure nice.
Thank you.
Make you look real cute. I believe we have some guests, county commissioners. Would you stand and introduce yourself, please?
My name is Timothy Prather. I'm County Commissioner for District 4, Lincoln County.
Thank you.
I'm Mark Fisher, County Commissioner for District 5.
Good evening. My name is Samantha Cerna. I represent District 2.
Good evening, MP Chavez, District 3.
Thank you for attending.
Mayor, I think we also have the county manager and the past county attorney.
I see the county manager, yes. And who else did we have, John?
Contract with the county, but former county attorney.
Okay, thank you for attending. First item on the agenda is approval of the agenda. A motion to approve.
I'll make that motion to approve.
Second.
Have a motion and a second.
Counselor Foster?
Aye.
Counselor Laidlaw?
Aye.
Counselor Baber?
Aye.
Counselor Miller?
Aye.
Motion carried.
Next on the agenda is approval of the consent agenda. Motion to approve.
I'll make that motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Counselor Foster?
Aye.
Counselor Miller?
Aye.
Counselor Baber?
Aye.
Counselor Laidlaw? Aye. Motion carried.
Next item is item 6 is public comments. Do we have citizens? One from the public that would like to address the governing body. When you address the governing body, we would ask that you address it to all of the governing body and no individuals. Yes, ma'am. Would you come forward and give us your name?
Anybody else on the list? There's a couple, but I'll go first.
Okay, you get to be first.
My name is Sarah Ames Brown. I'm a lifetime resident of Ruidoso Downs. Mr. Mayor, Counselor, council members, thank you for hearing my public comment. I
And if I
recently,
might say, I think you're also a member of our economic development.
yes, and that's what I was going to mention. I recently been appointed to the Economic Development Board, and I'm a little curious, and I'm talking about the special tax district. I'm a little curious why the Economic Development Board did not look at that before it came to council or didn't have any I know that you all are not supposed to comment on public comments. I just want to throw this out there for counselors and for the mayor to kind of keep in mind.
Okay.
The Economic Development Council would like very much to be involved in this discussion. I have a couple of questions that counselors I'd like you to think about a little bit during your discussion. I understand that the city and the county are being asked to agree to this special tax district, but I'm not sure about Ruidoso. I wasn't here for discussion on the last meeting. I think that the village plays a really important role here. We have 2,000 residents in Ruidoso Downs and a handful of businesses, including the track and Walmart. But the majority of the citizens in the area don't really live in Ruidoso Downs. So I'm curious as to what other communities are doing. Okay, I want to stick you.
Are you just asking if Ruidoso's in on this?
That's one question, yes, and the county also. And I'm also asking questions about other businesses. Have other businesses asked for something like this? Is the Economic Development Board, the council, the mayor prepared to assist other businesses in rebuilding in other ways? I am also concerned that being a small community, that we may be taken advantage of if it's just us. You know, we have two big tax bases here, the track and Walmart. If the taxes on food and beverage and all of that at the track is going to go towards this special district, I think that needs to happen. I think Walmart would also need to be included in that. But I would like to ask that and in the notice I read that it would be until we reach a certain amount that the track is requested and then that tax would stop. Counselors, I would like to recommend that you guys know that exact amount and have that published before any type of vote goes on. Okay, I know that in the past, the track has shown its power by discussing leaving the area. I don't want our city council to feel like they are being held hostage over something that is that big of a decision. And I want to make sure that other communities are participating as well. So counselors, as you go through your discussion, if any of those things are things that you could answer or find answers for, I think the general public would be interested. And I would really like to see this go into the Economic Development Board. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, if I might, I think that
Yes.
during our discussion today, or this evening, every one of those questions will be answered.
Okay, excellent.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks for getting us started on them.
Next,
Please.
it is someone whose name Eugene Eastman.
Oh, no, I was just signing in.
Oh, no, this is public comment. What about Mark Fincher?
If your name's up there, you have to talk.
I have to.
And then there's also T. Keithley at the very top. I didn't see that.
I was just
Sorry.
signing in. You don't have to get on the business.
Yeah, well, Commissioner Fisher is pretty shy. I don't know whether he'll, but I think he can suck it up and manage to think of something.
Let's try to manage it. Mr. Mayor, thank you, councilors. I appreciate the opportunity. For us, as a county and as commissioners, and I don't speak for myself, not the body. You understand that? This is me. I can't speak for the body. But we are absolutely interested in all the citizens of Lincoln County and in fact, the region. And we have, time and time again, and will continue to support business development here. And we also realize too, that the racetrack is truly an important economic driver for all of us. Right? There's no doubt about that. It all works. It all has to work. Having said all of that, we also have an enduring sacred responsibility to our citizens, all of them, whether they are modest in income and outlook or not. And so I want to make sure that when we consider this resolution, I think that you're going to consider today, that we have enough data to ensure that our citizens have a voice. That's what you're all about. That's what I'm all about. So make sure you understand the tax implications for your city. We as a county are going to make sure we understand the tax implications for the county, whether it be lost revenue, balanced out by something else. What are the development expectations for the revenue that one might get from a tax increment, whether it be on GRT and or property tax. That's also can be considered as well. And then how much opportunity has the public had to understand these issues and to weigh in on them so that we know what their will is? I will tell you up to this point, the answer to that is virtually nothing. And I'm unhappy with it. So make sure you do your due diligence. A rushed decision is often not the best. So I thank you very much for your time and attention.
Thank you, Commissioner Fisher. Anyone else from, any citizens? Anyone from Lincoln County? This is going to affect the entire county, correct?
If possible, I would like to chime in remotely.
Okay, identify yourself, please, sir.
I'm sorry, I thought my name would be up there. I'm Brian Roberts. I am on the Economic Development Board.
Yes, Brian.
So just a brief thought, and then I'll step back. The amount of money we're talking about is not insignificant. And if it were borne solely by the residents of Ruidoso Downs, it would amount to about $4,000 per capita. And obviously, that's not something that our residents can afford. However, I welcome the fact that the county is involved, and I think that it is a vital economic engine for both us, the county, as well as Ruidoso. My only comment is I want to make certain that what the monies will be used for are indeed just infrastructure, because my understanding is it has to be permanent infrastructure that is not available to be removed later if our tax dollars are used on it. With that, I will mute my mic and I'll watch the rest of the proceedings. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Okay, we already have two people from the Ruidoso Downs Economic Development Board. Both of Brian has been on there quite some time, and he's been a very good member of that committee. Anyone else? Okay, then we'll go to councilors' comments. Councilors? Councilor Proctor?
Okay, from what I understand on this, and this is just a discussion, on this, TID, is that it's not a tax increase on the citizens of Ruidoso Downs. And it's not supposed to be a tax increase on the citizens of Ruidoso Downs. I don't think I would go for anything like that. I think what it is, it's involving a business that the county, Ruidoso and Ruidoso Downs count on. We have a lot of people that's employed by the racetrack. There's other businesses that can apply for this. It's just not one business. It just happens to be the Ruidoso Downs racetrack has applied for it. The state and Lincoln County and Ruidoso Downs, from what I understand, are the only ones in this right now. And there is, I guess there is a ceiling to it according to some of the paperwork that I read, and that could be here and it could be there. It's hard to say. Once it hits that part, then it ceases. It's done. This is to help the track get back or pay back, and then it's paid back out of this from the entities from the county, the state, and Ruidoso Downs. There's still a lot of things that we need to look at, and a little more information we need to get on it, where it's going to go and how it's going to go. I know we can't lose the track, and that's it. Whatever we can do to help that, we're going to have to do, because we lose that. And when I don't know what our GRT is from the track. I do know that the Racing Commission got a piece of the pie. The state gets a piece of the pie of everything that the track does. I don't know what our piece of the pie is. Other than that, the Economic Development Board was represented at a meeting not too long ago with the racetrack manager, with the chairperson of the commission, the county commission, and the mayor. And I didn't have a whole lot to say to it because I didn't understand it. I got a better understanding now because I've looked into it, researched it. It can be good, it can be bad. It depends on how it's handled. The state will be the one honoring it. All this goes into a general, or not a general fund, but goes into this TID, and the state divvies it out as requested by the businesses. And so I don't know. I think I'd rather our county divvy it out than the state divvy it out, but I don't have control of that. That's where I'm standing on this right now. The more information I get, the better I'll feel about it. If I don't get any information, then the less I'll feel about it. So I'm hoping that more explanations can come across to what we're looking at, how long it's going to be, and how it's going to be done.
Counselor Miller.
Well, I just want to thank everybody for being here. It's great to see our little town full of interesting items that we have today. And to me, that racetrack is part of our lives here in Red Osa Downs. I've been here 50 years. And I think as a community, we all need to get together and support it. And I don't know all the details, but I'm glad to see this interest because so many of our residents and Red Osas and the county residents make a living. My mother worked there full time for 28 years. So I kind of love this racetrack. And I just hope we can come to an understanding and help the racetrack out.
Thank you, Counselor Miller. Any other counselors, comments? Okay, that'll take us then to mayor's comments, and I'm gonna go just right to new business. Item A under new business is resolutions 2025-01, a resolution adopting the budget adjustment request for the second quarter of the 2025 fiscal year. And I would ask our finance director to give us some information.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Before you sits the second quarter budget adjustments, and both of these adjustments are related to grant monies received. And so they were not in our original budget. I need to increase the budget on both of the grants received for revenues and expenditures. Any questions?
Yes, Counselor.
Question, did we get any FEMA money and would that show up on one of these reports that you're giving us?
We did not receive any FEMA money.
Thank you.
Counselor Proctor?
Yeah, mine's a little bit off of this quarterly report. What about our yearly audit? Has it been cleared or turned in?
I'm the review. Last time I spoke to the auditors.
I'm sorry, you broke up and I didn't understand what you were saying.
It's under review with our existing auditors.
So
He wants to know how long it's gonna be under review.
I do not know, sir.
It's kind of a long way. Is this from 22 or 23?
23.
2 years.
Okay, no more comments or questions from the council. Thank you very much, Mary.
Mr. Mayor, I do have one comment in relation to the gross receipts tax.
Okay.
I just want everybody to understand that the racetrack does not pay gross receipts tax.
Okay, thanks for the information.
That's all I have, sir.
Okay, was that information only?
No, that's for.
Yes, sir, that's it.
I mean, discussion, yeah. No action?
On item A is discussion and possible action.
Okay, we have information on that. I would make a motion to approve the resolution adopting the budget adjustment request for the second quarter of the 2025 fiscal year. Yes, Counselor.
I move that we approve this resolution to approve the budget adjustment request for the second quarter of the 2025 fiscal year.
Have a motion and a second.
Counselor Baker,
Did we have a motion?
In a second.
Aye.
Counselor Lacebaugh. Aye. Counselor Proctor,
Aye.
Counselor Miller,
Aye.
motion carried.
Next item under new business, and I'm gonna put my hat on. These lights really bother me, ever since I had the cataract removed. So I can do better with it. Item B is a discussion of the Tax Increment Development District, known as a TIDD. And I'll turn this part of the meeting to begin this discussion to our city attorney to get the discussion started.
Before we start the discussion, I move that we open discussion of the tax increment development district. We need a second.
I'll second that.
Vote on it tonight.
No,
We
Just
have
discussion.
we have to make a motion and second for anything we talk about. And this discussion is included in that motion.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have that and did we get a second?
I second it.
Okay. Don't need a roll call. Okay, City Attorney John Underwood.
Mr. Mayor, thank you very much. I've got a couple of folks from Santa Fe that whose time is limited on Zoom. Try and help explain to all of us. I've never done one of these either, so I'm certainly not any expert in the field. And I apologize. I first of all apologize to the Economic Development Board. As you're exactly right. In a perfect world, this would have come to the Economic Development Board first and then come to council. And by the time that I was contacted by Ms. Schultz, who is the lobbyist for the track, time was so short. But that's why I sent notice out to all of y'all about tonight's meeting so that you could be here. So in a perfect world and in the future, all of this will come to the Economic Development Board first. So I apologize. I have some other general comments of the knowledge that I do have about this, but I wanted to introduce to you because I know he's got a meeting in 10 minutes. Mr. Larry Horan, who has done these before in other municipalities in New Mexico. Larry, are you there?
Yeah, John, I'm here.
Okay. Could you, I believe that Marla has probably filled you in with where we are on the project, brand new to all of us. We've never done one. There's lots of different questions and concerns here that perhaps being someone who has walked through this for a municipality, you could help us out.
Mr. Duran, are you able to hear everything that you need to give us an answer?
Mayor, yes, I can hear you well, as long as you guys can hear me. John, if I may ask you, do you want me to run through the basics of a TID from start to finish, or do you want me to answer questions? What's going to be more helpful for you guys?
Give us basics of what it does and how it works, and then answer questions.
Okay. So a tax increment development district, from the beginning, what you have to do is you have to have a resolution to form the district itself, and you have to form the district boundaries. And so that's a geographical area where you form district boundaries, and then you identify the property owners within the boundaries of the district. And that resolution can be done by a local governing body. And then once you identify the property owners, depending, and Marla did what Ms. Schultz was able to talk to me a little bit about it. My understanding, I think, is it's a single property owner because it's the Ruidoso Downs racetrack within the district. If it's one property owner, or if it's even multiple property owners and they all sign the petition for formation, then the local governing body can waive the requirement for an election of the TID, because for the TID board would have to be elected if you had multiple property owners within the boundaries of the district. So I think, and if I'm correct, it's only one property owner. So if the property owner is the Ruidoso Downs, then you could decide, hey, we don't have to have an election. We're going to waive the election. So once you form the TID district and have a TID board, which is set forth in statute who the members of that TID board can be. It could be the members of the governing body, but you also have to have a couple other members, like the Department of Finance Administration has to have a member, and then I think there's one other statutory member. It may be the Secretary of Taxation and Revenue or their designee. So once you've identified the boundaries of the district, then you have to come up with what they call the TID plan or the TID development plan, which is tax increment development districts are designed to create economic growth. And typically they're graded upon how many new, what they call economic based jobs you're going to create. So you come up with your development plan, and even taking a further step back, the way the financing works is, I caught a little bit of public comment. If you have a tax increment development district, there is not a new tax on the area. The concept or the basic idea of a tax increment district is you're going to do something within the district to create economic growth. And you're going to use the growth in the revenue for the area to help pay for the public infrastructure. So the process is you have to set a baseline date to determine current gross receipts tax collection within the boundaries of the district. And then the idea is when you create new jobs and new business within the boundaries of the district, you're going to create economic growth. That's what they call the increment. So the increment in TIDD means the incremental growth in property and gross receipts tax. So if your baseline gross receipts tax on January 1st of 2025 is 0, and next year you make $10 million within the boundary of the district, that's the increment. It would be the $10 million. But let's say you have a base economics of $1 million, and next year you make $10 million in the boundaries of the district. The increment is that $9 million. So it's the growth from your point 0 in time moving forward. And the basics of TID financing is the city, county, and state can designate a portion of that incremental growth to go back into the tax increment development district to fund public infrastructure. So in the statute that governs the formation of a TID, there's a list of expenditures that are acceptable to spend with the tax increment financing. And the city, county, and state at property gross receipts tax level can all dedicate up to 75% of the incremental growth. So if you're making money in the TID, only 75% of that new revenue can go back in the TID. The rest goes into whatever everybody's respective general fund. And I'll just go on a couple more pieces and I'll stop because I know it gets pretty confusing. The city and county can dedicate their tax increments just at the local level. So you can decide as a governing body that you want to dedicate revenue within the boundaries of the tax increment development district to go back to the district. At the state level, there's more steps. So you have to take your development plan and you have to appear before the Board of Finance, which is chaired by the governor and has statutory seats. And John, you're probably aware of the Board of Finance, how it works. The treasurer's on it, the governor's designee, staff, maybe in it. The auditor may be on it. I don't remember statutorily, but it's a board, and then there's a governor appointed members. You have to go before the Board of Finance and present your plan, and then the State Board of Finance will recommend a portion or how much the states should dedicate of their gross receipts tax revenue in the actual TID to dedicate to the TID. Then you have another step. You have to go to the New Mexico Finance Authority, and they have to look at your plan for bonding and issuance of bonds, because the TID allows you to issue bonds to pay for that public infrastructure, and then those bonds are financed by that increment financing. So they have to look at your plan and say it's an okay plan. And then the third and final step is you have to go before the legislature, and you have to have enabling legislation to authorize the issuance of the bonds. So that's the mechanism for the legislature to approve the tax increment financing for the TID itself. And that's kind of TID at the basic level. And I'll stop, and there's some other things we may want to get into, but I'll stop because you may have questions on how that works.
May I address the question? Larry, as I understand from information I've received in the last 10 days since I first visited Marla about this issue and first wrote this memo to the council, I have discovered that the tract doesn't pay gross receipts tax. None of the gross receipts taxes that the tract pays come back to the village, back to the city, excuse me. So all those gross receipts taxes for racing and alcohol and all that stuff and gaming all go to the state. So what I believe I have discovered in the last few days is that for the city, and I believe the same thing will stand true for the county, is that the amount of gross receipts taxes that either the city receives or the county receives from the tract is zero. So one of the reasons that I believe that Ms. Schultz, Marla, asked for this to happen on behalf of the tract was to have it happen during the legislative session, which was some of the reason for the rush of the hearing, because we've only got another 50 days to get this done, so that the state could enact legislation so that they could impose gross receipts tax that the state receives from the tract and move that money back into the TID, which will be governed by this members of this board, the county, and the tract. So does that scenario make sense to you because we don't have a baseline for gross receipts taxes?
John, the scenario works that you want the state's increment because you don't have the local increment. The biggest part, I mean, if you're getting city gross receipts tax, you're getting in the boundaries of a TID, you're going to get a pretty significant amount of revenue. The property tax increment doesn't normally, unless there's two types of TIDs, one they call brownfield, one they call greenfield. A greenfield is brand new development where you have nothing. So you have property tax value that will go up. So it's ripe for property tax. In the event of what you have was a brownfield, which means it's a redevelopment of an area that already has something, your property tax value may go up some, but it's not going to be that significant. So you need the state's increment for the
Gross receipts tax.
for the gross receipts to make it viable.
Right. And so that was my understanding of why we were trying to get this done and accomplished before the end of the legislative session so that we could get state statutes or state bill authorizing this to happen so the state could start paying those gross receipts taxes in July.
Yes, although you might be, because of timing on gross receipts tax, and again, I don't mean to complicate this, John, but as you know, I want to make sure you have all the information.
Right.
So when we had destination sourcing, which means when we started to collect internet sales gross receipts tax, the way the gross receipts tax collected changed, and it created a problem for tax increment development districts and for metropolitan redevelopment areas. Because when you were able to look within the geographic boundaries of a district, the taxation and revenue department could estimate what gross receipts tax was made in an area. But once you had destination sourcing, every time somebody buys something on the internet, it becomes a point of sale. So what they've done and what they're going to do in this legislative session is they're going to change the way you set your baseline gross receipts tax. Right now, if it's only the track and you tried to set your baseline, you could estimate or you could use actual gross receipts that you've calculated because you have one payer. But what they're going to do going forward is they're going to require, if it passes in the tax cleanup bill that's been introduced in the legislature, you're going to have to identify the boundaries of the district. You have to notify tax and rev 90 days before the beginning of July 1. They're going to form a code that businesses will have to report gross receipts tax in, collect data for a year, and put you off for a year. So the other timing issue you have is if that goes into effect, starting this July 1st, you're going to have to wait a year before you can set your baseline. So if you can determine what your baseline gross receipts tax is, you want to try and do it this session, because otherwise you're going to have to wait a year going forward to try and get that increment financing. And not to confuse the issue even more, But the other vehicle you could use would be the Metropolitan Redevelopment Act, which allows a local governing body to designate an area of blight. And we have recently changed that statute to allow for tax increment financing in an MRA area. So it's the only reason I would suggest you look at that is it's a wider ability of types of ways you can spend your money, but the financing mechanism is exactly the same. You have to identify a baseline, you have to identify the incremental growth, and that growth can be dedicated in the area. But it's another way that that you can utilize increment financing, but it would put you off. You would be a year out before you'd be able to start collection.
Okay. Anybody else have questions?
I'm a little bit confused. So is all of this based upon gross receipts tax?
It's a good question because we keep hearing property taxes being brought up also, and I believe the count, that would be an effect to the county is an increment in growth in property taxes, because you guys are the ones that collect the property tax.
That's correct.
So, I guess what I hear Larry saying, and Larry, correct me if I'm wrong, is that the only portion of the property taxes, which would be subject to any 5%, whatever it is, from the county, would be the increase in property taxes from next year to this past year, if this year is used as the base.
John, that's correct. It's the same mechanism for property tax, meaning you have a baseline property tax value. Let's say it's $100 this year. Because of new activity in the tax increment development district, next year it's $200. You have a growth of 100, and that would be eligible for increment dedication by the county at the same level.
Whatever percentage that the county decide to dedicate.
Up to 75% of the growth. And the way we make this argument on, and the city of Las Cruces did a TID itself for their downtown, and they were the TID board. And the argument that is made at the legislature is there's no risk to the local governing body, because if the project fails and it's a reimbursement, so if it fails, the local body's not on the hook for that funding.
Hey, Commissioner Fisher, you have a question?
Yes, sir, I do. Two things.
Mark, would you come up to the
Yeah.
microphone, please?
Sorry, and I don't mean to impose myself on here, but I do think there are a couple questions that actually affect the county as well as y'all. So,
And Larry, this is Commissioner Fisher. I think he's chairman of the county commission.
yes, Larry. So Larry, getting back to the ownership of the property, I think we're talking not only of the infrastructure that's on top of the land, but it's also the land. Is that not correct? Yes, it is.
Commissioner, I'm not sure I understand the question. You're meaning where you can spend the money?
Oh, no, ownership. So ownership is important, as I understand it, because
Correct.
that allows us to form a board with the parties that are owners. Is that not correct?
That's correct. So all the owners have to decide, all the property owners within the boundary of the district have to decide to do it.
Understood, sir. So in the event that we have the village of Ruidoso owning a portion of the land inside the tract, as well as Ruidoso Downs, also, that infrastructure is obviously the Ruidoso Downs company owns that piece. And then we've got Lincoln County owning a portion of the land, right, or have that jurisdiction, I should say. And then we have Ruidoso Downs, the city owning. So you've got, four owners? You got Ruidoso Downs, you got Lincoln County, the village of Ruidoso, and then the tract. Right? So those people have to be represented on the board.
Except for the fact, as you know, in our meeting when we had Ruidoso present, even though they own the waterway, so they can get FEMA funding from FEMA to rebuild the waterway, Ruidoso just has no desire to be a board member or have any vote on it.
The lease is going back to the tribe. Be leased back to the tribe.
It'll be leased back to the tract.
Yes.
Okay, fair enough. Having said that, if they're not going to be on the board, then that's important to have that in writing.
Right.
The other piece I wanted to ask about was the two tax increment options or are the options. And one is the property tax, which obviously affects the county wide. And then you have the gross receipts tax, which we seem to have some concerns about coming up with a baseline year. If those gross receipts from 2024 have been collected or distributed to the state, then it would seem that would be possible to get what those amounts were for 2024. Is that correct?
Commissioner, if it's a small enough, the issue you run into with taxation and revenue department to get the number is if you have a whole bunch of different taxpayers within a district. If you have,
We only have one.
So you probably,
predominantly one.
you would be able to actually probably use the actual gross receipts tax because you know the reporting. Because as the reporting, as the payer, you don't have the confidentiality problem. Typically where you run into a problem finding the base is that they can't necessarily go back and identify all the businesses. If it's one,
so
it should
it
be
is-
easy for you to get to find your baseline date.
Yeah, and I think in this particular instance, specific instance, that should be relatively straightforward and would work for the benefit of this TID. And I would like to see, can we just limit it to GRT then and not bring in property taxes? Is that possible to limit it to GRT?
Commissioner, for every level, at every level, the city, county, state, that governing body, so your county commission has the ability to say yes or no to property tax, or when you're putting the development agreement together, you don't have to do both gross receipts tax and property tax. Most TIDs, or every TID I've been involved in, focuses primarily on the gross receipts tax because it's usually the biggest amount of growth. So yes, you can limit it to just gross receipts tax.
Yeah, I'd like to be able to protect the taxpayers of the county and city and so forth. So the next question, which I think is very important, what are the projected uses of that revenue? Number one. Number two, if a TID bond was financed through this mechanism, and for whatever ridiculous reason, calamity, act of God, a GRT did not go up, would the bondholders, presumably the ones on the board, be responsible for making good on that bond, or is it forgiven? What's the ramifications of not having enough money to support the financing of the bond?
So one thing you for sure want to do is you want to consult with bond counsel when you're putting it together and you're putting your package together, because typically with the tax increment development districts, the developer, the one who they have to pay for the infrastructure that gets paid back with the incremental growth. They're usually the bondholder, or they can sell that bond on the open bond market. So whoever buys the bond, and it's not the local governments, whoever buys the bond and owns the bond, if the project does not produce any revenue, the bondholders are the ones on the hook. The city, county, state, whoever has dedicated their revenue, they're not on the hook, because if you're at a $0 amount of growth and you get no growth or negative growth, the developer or the business is the one that it has the risk of it not working. And so that's why why they look so closely at that plan.
Okay, thank you. One more question. And so the uses, I did scan the statute myself, and I'm not a lawyer, but it would appear to me that the limitations on the use of the revenue are to public facilities, correct? Publicly owned facilities.
That's correct. It has to be for public infrastructure, and then the ownership of that infrastructure, once it's put in place. Let's say you put in a water line or a sewer line, whoever would normally, usually the city would then take ownership of that. Or if it's a road, or if it's, broadband, other eligible infrastructure, the local public body gets ownership of the asset.
Right, and this could be a development, right? An economic development driver investment, correct, of some sort.
Yes, and that's normally why they're formed, to innate, to create that development within an area within a city or a
Okay,
county.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Mayor,
Yes, Counselor.
I have a question. So right now, Ruidoso Downs gets 0 gross receipts tax from the tract and the state gets 100%. What's in it for the state to relinquish their gross receipts to us? Why would the state want to do that?
From the argument I've had to make on the ones that I've worked on, all the ones I've worked on, is you have to show the state that by spending this money, you're going to create more revenue going forward, and you're going to create more jobs going forward so that they have an incentive to help create the growth. So if you don't have a plan that's going to create growth, then this financing, they may not agree to it, which is why I brought up also the Metropolitan Redevelopment Act. That's another tool that uses tax increment financing, but is designed more to bring up an area out of blight. It's not necessarily have to do with the development, and it's actually broader in the ways that you can spend the money, and that's controlled at the local governing body level. You still need the state's increment. They still have to say yes, but in metropolitan redevelopment area has to be administered by a local governing body. A tax increment development district can be all developer generated. In this case, it doesn't sound like it is, but it would be a partnership between. But there's a difference between the two of them, but both of them can use the same financing mechanisms.
Larry? It's Underwood again. I have a question. The project, the redevelopment project has all been caused by the floods Ruidoso suffered last summer. And particularly the track, as you probably know, had to move its operations to Albuquerque and was unable to finish half the year here. So Rick Ball is here and he'll be presenting what it's costing the track to rebuild the portions of the track that were taken out by flooding. But I'm concerned about my understanding of your answer to the commissioner's question. The infrastructure that's being done is all going to be taking place on private property. It's not taking place on public property. So all of that will be going into rebuilding the track so it can operate again. So those funds would be used for that purpose. Is that allowed?
So as long as it's for infrastructure within the list, that then becomes, because even when you're on private property, let's say your sewer line, your water line, broadband going in, that's still a public utility. So the public body owns it. So to that extent, yes. But John, and that's why, and I apologize, and we didn't have a chance to talk before the meeting. That's why you should also look at the Metropolitan Redevelopment Act, because they actually have broader powers on what they can spend on within the boundaries of the area.
Okay. So if it isn't for a sewer line or a water line that's owned by the public, if it's for rebuilding the track itself from the water damages received, are you saying that the TID may not be the proper tool to do that?
It would, yeah, John, it would just depend if they consider the track itself to be part of that public infrastructure, and then you'd have to make sure, because if you're the track, you want to make sure that you retain ownership of it. So you have to, you just have to make sure on that. And that's why and Marlon and I talked a little bit about it, it's broader under the Metropolitan Redevelopment Act, because it's actually designed for blighted areas. So for instance, in Albuquerque, they're doing a metropolitan redevelopment area along East Central where there's a bunch of businesses closed, because they can spend money in a different way on those businesses, which are privately owned and is private property.
Okay. Any more questions?
If we need to, John, I'm happy to talk offline in more detail as you need help on this. Because we did the metropolitan redevelopment stuff the last couple of years too.
Marla, do you have any comments?
I don't right now, John, thank you. Larry and I spent some time on this today, and I think that the MRA is an option. I believe the TID is something we should still pursue. I think there's still some we have a little bit of a difference of opinion on what that money can be used for, but that's part of what we're researching right now. But I just thank Larry because he's a wealth of knowledge on this.
Okay, if y'all don't mind, I'll ask Mr. Ball to make a presentation. Introduce yourself and don't be long.
Mayor, council members, my name is Rick Ball. I'm the general manager at Red Osa Downs Racetrack. I have over 20 years of experience here at Red Osa Downs and at the home of the Triple Crown Quarter Horse industry. As you can all tell by what we've learned today, and Larry, I really appreciate your input, Marla, as well as you. This is a learning curve for everyone. And we're looking at it from every avenue and every aspect that we can to move this process forward. And that's what I was saying earlier to John was, I know everybody's questioned in the TID Act. The purpose is to support economic development, which in turn creates jobs and support local businesses. Red Osa Downs has been an economic impact to Lincoln County to the tune of $160 million on an annual basis. And we pay in approximately $725,000 in gross receipts, as well as $108,000 in property taxes annually. The hardest thing that I ever did in my career was to announce that we were going to be moving this race meet to the Downs of Albuquerque. And Councilman Baber's laughing. It's not just because of the Downs of Albuquerque. It's because I knew what the community effect was going to be. And it was going to be devastating for everyone. By moving, there are a lot of businesses in town that were losing up to 40 to 70% right off the bat. And, running back and forth from Albuquerque and hearing that and seeing it, I even spoke with the president of the tribe, and she said within the first 2 weeks, they lost 2.5 million. And they're at a 40% downturn as we speak right now. And the reason I can speak to that so openly is because everybody knows what this economic engine does for this area. 160 million to this area. There's not very many places in the state of New Mexico that can even come close to that. Right now at the track, we're sustaining about a $12.5 million loss is where we're at. For example, in moving, just our rent payment to the Downs of Albuquerque was well over $500,000 that we had to pay to the Downs of Albuquerque. And we did that to sustain this business with horse industry as a surrounding area. You were getting television coverage from all over. You didn't want to lose that. We want to be back next year. We want to bring it back stronger than ever. Many of you know, and many of you don't know, a major portion of the public river on private property, we had a huge issue there because the river was not being maintained. And I've risen this concern, and I'm still raising that concern. And the reason I say that is because of sustainability to move forward. There has to be additional work done upstream, not only at this racetrack, for us to be sustainable. The private property asset has brought on many challenges going after state money. The TID that we've just discussed is something we'll be creating with this council, and you'll have full decision-making process throughout this process. It's a learning curve that we're all going through. And I'd like to tell Marla I appreciate what she's done in the MRA. We're taking a look at that, but we had to start somewhere with this process. And the TID was where we were at today and what we were told that we could use as the engine to drive this process forward. There's going to be changes headed to Santa Fe Thursday, Friday to learn more about this. And we're working with our legislators up there for more revenues to come to this area to help everyone. So it's a uphill battle and we need y'all's help. And I just appreciate the time to be before you today.
Rick, could you explain the private river that runs through Ruidoso Downs and the arrangement that was made with the village of Ruidoso.
Sure.
FEMA funding for that.
There, because of looking forward and the issues that we ran into, and we still are today. You got private property, public river. So the construction cost right now to repair the culverts underneath the racetrack is $18 million for those culverts. So for us to take on that cost, looking in the future, that FEMA was saying that we'd had to take them out due to their rules. Within 3 years, we'd have to replace them. So by working with the village and the connections that the village had, we're going to be gifting to the village 28 acres. And that'll be the river. And here's the kicker that's really hard for me to say, an 8-acre retention basin in the infield, which is 135,000 yards of material that's got to come out of that infield. We agreed to that for one reason, well, more than one. The main reason is it will protect Spaghetti Flats. And also it'll protect the sewer treatment plant, which the village of Ruidoso, the city of Ruidoso Downs, and the Mescalero Apache, we all rely on that sewer treatment plant. So that's the reason we agreed to have them put that 8-acre retention basin in the infield. Looking at it from a racetrack operator standpoint, I'm going to have a big old ugly hole out there in the middle of that racetrack that I got to put a fence around because, as you'll attest, racehorses get loose. And it's a 10-foot pond with 3-to-1 slopes on it. And it'll basically extend from one end to the other. But there again, it'll help protect Spaghetti Flats, the sewer treatment plant, and the Highway 70 bridge. We've been fighting, as Mr. Jarvis can attest, we were fighting these floods before the fires come along. And thanks to Mayor and the council and your staff, they've been down there with us shoulder to shoulder on many occasions to fight off the floods and the mitigation that we've had. So we've all learned a valuable lesson that we have to do things different. And I've been told time and time again, and one of my experts is the county manager sitting right back here, and he says, you haven't seen the worst one yet, which concerns us all. So.
So the estimate of the repair to the portion of the river and the holding pond is some $15 to $18 million.
Yes, sir.
And that FEMA funding going to the village of Ruidoso to.
Well, it's
because it couldn't come to y'all because you're private.
It's actually going from the village to the state, where the state will get, everybody will get their money back from FEMA. It's the way it
And
works.
the reason I mentioned that is my understanding, now that I understand that all these monies that are going to be paid to the state in gross receipts taxes, it will be the state who has the opportunity through this kid to pay them back.
That's where.
It's some $15 to $18 million gross receipts tax on that.
That's where we'll see a huge lift in our GRT because of all of the construction costs that's gone on in the area. And I appreciate the chairman of the commission's standpoint property tax because we lost so many homes in the area, structures as well. Was it, Mark, 1,500?
We're about 1350.
1350. So property taxes are going to be down for Lincoln County for sure. But also that there's a lot of contractors right now that have called me and wanting to know what we're going to do, or they're not going to reinvest. So there's so many moving parts to this puzzle that it's unbelievable.
Questions?
Rick, the paper that we got up here is just talking about the gross receipts tax, and he was talking about property taxes. Which one is it going to be?
It'll be, we generate 725,000 average on an annual basis, and we generated an additional 108,000 in property tax. So our plan is to go after the GRT. And it can, from what I understand, as we're all going through the process, that if we, the legislative finance committee to agree and the state finance, 100% of this can come from the state.
The reason that we have to sign on is because it's located in our governmental agenda in our area that we have power over. The same thing for the county. The reason that the county would be involved is because of the fact that they, it's in their jurisdiction of word on 74. So, the city and the county and the state would be and the state through the Tax and Rev Committee or the, one of their major committees would be the major player in the TID board. I read about what I sent you that determines how to reimburse, what reimbursements will be made to Rio Downs. If the checks aren't sent to Rio Downs, the checks are sent to the TID board. The TID board will distribute the checks.
But the village isn't in on this?
No, I met with the village because of the fact that they had some property ownership of the river. And they said they had no interest in serving on the board. One of the reasons that the village should be included in the agenda, though, is that because of the gross receipts taxes that they'll be receiving on the rebuilding of the culverts and stuff like that, that's $15 to $18 million worth of expenses. The gross receipts taxes that are going to be sent to the state are going to be quite large, which will help the state pay this back really quickly, I believe. But my understanding now is that basically with being gross receipts taxes, and since Mary got my head straight on the fact that we don't receive any gross receipts taxes from the track, all of the gross receipts taxes and all the increment is all going to be to the state. So basically, we get to help the state figure out how best to reimburse the Rio Downs racetrack on its rebuilding issues. So it's a simple way of putting it, but that's about as clear and as much understanding as I have at this time.
So are we gonna go with this plan or are we gonna go with the Metropolitan?
Well, I haven't looked at the Metropolitan. I talked to Larry about that tomorrow, but I wanted to get this out on the table. I was only contacted about 10 days ago by Marla Show. And one of the issues, and this is my apology to the Economic Development Board, one of the issues is that we have to make this decision and act on this before the end of this legislative session in order to get the state bill passed. So it will either be this or metropolitan redevelopment or one of the two, which I'll bring back to y'all either at the next meeting or a special meeting to try and get as much information on this as we have. I don't expect you guys to vote on any of this until we have a firm understanding and a draft of whatever sort of resolution that you would have to pass so that you know definitely what you're voting on.
Well, we gotta have it before the next meeting or we're not gonna be able to do the February 20th deal.
Well, they can drop the bill and the resolutions can come in before the state acts on it. So I think we'll be okay.
Chairman Fisher. Thank you, sir. So I want to make it clear, I support in general, in concept, everything. I love the track. I'm in the horse industry, albeit tiny, but I am. And I've got a bunch of friends and neighbors that are. It's important for the area. We've got to make this work, but I want to make sure that we do this eyes wide open, right? So when I look at this piece of paper that was distributed, it's a poor copy from the Legislative Finance Committee on Financing Facts. I have a concern here for the taxpayers, right? If you look at it, y'all have this, right? You have that? Okay, so I'm going to refer to this document. If you look at the last paragraph on the right hand of the page, it says, actually, it's the second last sentence. It says, unless the district, that's our TIDS district that we want to set up, is part of a metropolitan redevelopment area, property owners in the district must cover 20% of the initial infrastructure cost. However, the district can repay them with bond proceeds. Do we understand that? And I guess the track, Rick, understands.
Well, this Metropolitan Act was the first I heard of it was today.
Well, this says, yeah, this says unless the district is part of the metropolitan redevelopment area, which we've not talked about in any serious way. Talked about TIDs. Again, I'm not against the TID, right? I understand that. It says that the property owners in the TID district, right? Whoever that is. And so now you have the village. You've got the Miller Trust. Is that accurate?
Correct.
Owns the land. And then you've got obviously the track, right? And then you probably have some, you might have some other entities, smaller entities as well. It says they will cover 20% of the infrastructure costs. We're talking millions of dollars. So we got to understand that too. I'm not saying it's not a hill we can't overcome, but we need to understand that before we go forward. We cannot raise the property taxes of any citizen in Lincoln County. So you got to figure that out, right? I can't do it. I'm not smart enough on this stuff, but no, we support this deal. We got to have this. This has got to happen. And there's some other issues that'll pop up in support of this effort later, but
Yeah, Chairman, I was gonna ask you, y'all seem to have done some homework. Have y'all done any additional homework to come with a better avenue or what are y'all's thoughts?
God, I hate to talk for commission. I'm not going to. I'll just say this from my standpoint. I think the TID's geographically limited to the racetrack and that property piece sounds like a good deal. I think what the devil's in the details is with everything. How much is the bonding going to be that we're going to ask for, which will give us a notion, an estimate, how long this thing is going to happen. We need to know what the liability is for the taxpayers. And that 20% really bothers me. It was pointed out to me just at this meeting because, it's still kind of new. So we got our homework. I think we can make this work. So we got to make it work. We got to figure it out. But we're going to need some help. We're going to need some.
Larry still on there?
Larry, are you still here?
No, Larry had to exit, and so, but just to add, you're absolutely correct. There's still a lot of moving parts. The 20% that is new to me. I know a little more and have had more involvement with TIDS than I have with the MRA. We're going to spend some time studying that tomorrow. I'm not sure that I've seen any other TIDS where the owners were liable to that degree. But again, it's an answer that absolutely has to, a question that has to absolutely be answered.
Yeah, I want to make it perfectly clear. I'm going to say it for the fourth time. It says, unless the district is part of a metropolitan redevelopment area, unless it is, then that suggests to me, then it says property owners in the district must cover 20% of the initial infrastructure cost. So one might imagine that we might need some bonding sources outside or some means of getting that 20% initially outside of this process. And it says, however, the district can repay them with bond proceeds. So in other words, we got to find that 20%. And then the board, whoever is on that board, then has to make a commitment to the ones that are paid the 20%, that we're going to pay that off through the proceeds of the TIDS. I think that's how it works. Again, we need details, but I think it can happen. So I thank you again for your indulgence.
Mark,
Yes, sir.
My only question,
I have a question. I was under the impression that the district is just the track. When you say
Correct.
district, you mean just the track.
Yeah.
There's only one piece of property in there, and that's owned by the track. And if you're gonna.
Well, and you have, remember we said there's like 4, right? It's the track, it's the Miller Estate or the Miller Trust.
Owns the property now.
There's,
Same thing.
okay, but there still is, the land underneath the track is owned by the Miller Trust. So that's one, that's the track, that's Ruidoso, the village, it's Ruidoso Downs, and it's Lincoln County. That's 5 members that have to be on that board.
but we don't own, other than the track being the lessee and the Miller Trust being the owner, we don't own any property in that TID. So that would be something that would come between Ruidoso Downs Racetrack and the Miller Trust as to if there is an obligation to pay.
And we hold the lease, so
Right.
we're liable.
So I think that's.
So maybe it's 4.
We're not a property owner, neither are you guys.
But the village of Ruidoso will be, is that what I learned tonight? 28 acres.
Well,
will be
they're
deeded
not,
to them?
they don't own any of the revenue producing part of that, Sam. They only own the riverbed.
No, but will the property be subdivided and deeded over to the Village of Ruidoso?
Correct.
And
And
with
leased
the,
back to the track.
with the infill there being theirs, that'll be carved out. And so all of that land will be removed from the property tax base. So that'll be an abatement, but it'll also be an avenue to make public improvements since the village owns it as a governmental entity. So that'll open you up for the FEMA funding and
Yeah,
whatnot.
moving forward.
And we're already looking at public improvements only exclusively with a TID. So I think that's your avenue for finding relief for spaghetti flats.
Right, I think that's the intention. But I just wanted to point that, this 20% of the initial infrastructure cost has to be carved out up front. There's got to be some initial investment in that, which can later be paid by the TIDs as we increment this GRT. And I think it's critical that we push to get the GRT 2024 for the tracks receipts. I don't see how that can be a problem. It's a single payer, more or less. Yeah. So that should be an easy deal, and it works to the benefit of this plan, this program. So I hope I helped and didn't hurt, but I think it's important that we're all understanding what's going on, right? Because if you don't have the confidence of knowing what's going on, feel kind of funny about supporting it. And then we got a bunch of people that don't think we're doing our job. So I thank you very much.
Thank you.
Councilor Proctor? I don't guess we got anybody up there. Who is going to be responsible for setting the percentage of what the track will ask for?
This is my guess, okay, this is a wag.
I hate guesses, John.
That I don't have an answer
Rick
for.
used to make me guess when I worked.
So my understanding in talking with Marla about this is that if we move through this, tax and rev will help us figure out what that's going to be set at. And it won't, I think Rick was going to tell us how much money they have spent on, or have proposed to spend on rebuilding the track. It was some 10 to 15 million.
It changes every day, John.
So it's a.
So I got a wag here too.
Right.
But, and Terry, just, I'm sorry, Councilman, the scenarios that I put in your packet for downtown Las Cruces, there's breakdowns on these different scenarios, and then you got the Mesilla del Sol TID, and there's breakdowns. I mean, one was let's call it 8.7 million, another one was 9.3 million. So I think, in my humble opinion, by looking at these, I think every scenario is a little bit different. And I truly feel like we're at the mercy of tax and rev. And they're going to be looking at the district as a whole, from the downtown district of Mesa del Sol and Las Cruces, and then the Mesa del Sol TID, and then the Windrock Town Center in Albuquerque. Everything looks different. So with that being said, I'll go with John's wag once we get to the process and see what the attorneys and the finance people recommend for this area.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Rick, but my understanding is that earlier today when I spoke with Marla, y'all are going out to hire a bond attorney that can advise all of us on this. Is that correct?
Correct. Yes.
Yes, sir. Hey, so FEMA's taking care of your infield, we're getting all that structure taken care of. So that's not coming out of your pocket and go back to Rio Dosa to help protect the spaghetti flats in our sewer system down here. Then your actual repairs is going to be the running track itself.
The surface, the
Surface.
jocks quarters, the
Jocks
paddock,
quarters
the
and all
tote
that.
board,
Is that going?
Our town.
The trial been done. I know the whole track will have to be.
yeah, and then the racing surface as well. Yeah.
So is the jock course going to be tore down and just completely?
We've already gutted it, and as Chairman or Councilman Baber can attest, that jocks room used to be very open. And during COVID, they went in and built the room separators in there. And that did not work well for air circulation. So we're removing that, and taking the room back to the way it used to be.
So and so that cost is what you're going to encumber on that there.
Yeah.
So what about your total?
Just on the tote board alone, that's gonna be $75,000-$80,000. Yeah. And the electrical, the transformers were blown out, we're already out. I'd have to ask my senior VP of finance. I haven't seen the cost to redo the electrical coming in to the infield itself that had to be redone, and it just keeps piling every day.
Nothing off of the mountain got into the grandstands, nothing damaged.
No, it didn't go into the grandstands. No.
Thank you.
Yeah, these are all permanent repairs, as Chairman Fisher was referring to, that we've got to do.
So I'm sorry, I want to clarify, this is important. So FEMA is going to pay for this interim fix, right? This emergency repair. They're going to replace large culverts that are damaged with 3 smaller ones to give us a flow rate that's similar, but it's not a permanent repair because when you get a small straw, it clogs up quicker than a large straw. Think of the culverts that way. The repairs that are being done by FEMA hopefully get us through the next year or 2. We don't know, but we hope. What a large part of this, and I can't believe I'm advocating for this, but you know how I feel. The reason for the TIDs in part is to have permanent repairs on the track, which are going to cost, Rick said, $14-15 million. We don't know what's going to happen there. But you're going to put large culverts, or maybe even better, almost bridges on either side, so that when you have these flows, right, they actually can flow through and you don't have an issue going forward. That's where the big money comes in.
And
that's the big money.
To take that a step further, and this is a if, FEMA will allow the village of Ruidoso to come in and harden these culverts, which could be with riprap, it could be with shotcrete. The engineers have to decide that. They may be able to stay permanently, but that's going to be a cost on the village of Ruidoso.
They're not going back with the big flood culvert.
Well,
concrete.
Councilman, I'd like to say I could answer that question right now because that changed this morning. Because now Region 6 out of Dallas has gotten involved because the waterways of the U.S. And if there is what is considered a rise in your restricting flow, then Region 6 has a problem with that, of the waterways that go to Texas. So everybody thinks just fix it and let's go on. It's as I did as well, but it's not working that way.
So we don't know what size culverts are going.
We're supposed to give them another 5 days. And then we'll see where we're at. But I'm running out of time, just being perfectly honest with everyone in the room.
Quicker than the people that's going to be talking to us. I appreciate everything you've said and done here. County Commissioner, and with you, Rick. I've known Rick for 20+ years. He was my boss and a friend, and I can understand where he's coming from. The quicker we can get the information, the quicker we can act on it, the quicker we can do something about it to help. Please make sure that the information you present to this board is accurate, facts, and has some skin to it. Okay, I think I heard Chairman Commissioner Fraser up there in the meeting a couple of weeks ago, week and a half ago. He said everybody got some skin in the game. Okay, I think the skin's coming off of the backside of the track.
And once again, I appreciate y'all's time, but we are going to need your help. I mean, we are small, and we're going to need legislative voices up there. and we're gonna need people talking, and we'll educate as best as we can. But as a past legislator sitting right here in the room with us, it changes. Is that a fair assessment?
We have discussed it with Harlan Vincent though,
Mhm.
so he's aware of the situation.
And our new legislator,
File a bill
Nick Paul,
if we're in favor.
we've had numerous legislators already step up and contact us and say, we want to co-sponsor your bill. And I'm talking 35, 40 legislators that want to co-sponsor. So we've got the support. We just got to get to the finish line.
So you're just gonna go back and redo this and get with somebody and then come back to us?
Yes. We'll find the best avenue
I was
possible.
probably, especially the mayor calls some special meetings. For the next,
Yeah.
I'll just keep feeding back to you all the information that I gather as it comes in.
Yes, Counselor.
This is easy to John or Mr. Bott. Do I understand again, that for all these moving parts and forever, however this gets, the biggest it gets, it starts with these four counselors agreeing we're gonna do something? Does it start here?
Yeah.
Okay.
Starts hearing with the county commission.
Okay.
If we're not in, it's gonna be hard to convince the state to put all that, gross receipts in.
Yeah.
So.
Yes,
It's gotta be
just to add on that really quickly, a unified community is going to be very critical. I will say the legislature is extremely empathetic, sympathetic with everything that you all have been through. So that's a very positive thing, but we have to go in as a unified front.
Well, just say with the downstream, Spaghetti Flats and the sewer plant is, we've got to look at that. If we lose that, Red Oaks is in on it. I mean, it's crap flows downhill.
Thank you, Mr. Ball.
Thank y'all. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
I don't have anything else, Mr. Mayor.
All right, having completed city business, we are adjourned.